represents you here in this room and those who have chosen, for whatever reason, not to be in this room.
That's Bernie Sanders, just one of several Democratic presidential candidates at the California State Party convention over the weekend, who took aim either directly or indirectly at Joe Biden, the frontrunner. Joining me now, Mo Alithi, former DNC communications director, and Marc Thiessen, former speechwriter to President George W. Bush, and both are Fox News contributors, and it's great to have you here. Take a listen to two other Democrats at the same convention talking about the frontrunner.
Say, if we all just calm down, the Republicans will come to their senses. But our country is in a time of crisis. The time for small ideas is over.
So the riskiest thing we could do is try too hard to play it safe.
And Politico writing that the former Veep is running against himself. The rest of the field is trying to get within striking distance. It's like an Alaskan dog sled, said Bob Mulholland. He's a DNC member from California. If you're not the lead dog, the view is the same all day long. Biden, as a leader, doesn't need to be at every weekend barbecue. Mo, is that the case?
Well, I think it's true that Joe Biden is a pretty strong frontrunner right now, and I think it's maybe surprising to some people just how solid his support has been in this early phase. But it is still just an early phase. And the others, I guess, are starting to feel some need to mix it up a little bit and try to chip away at his lead. Bernie Sanders has seen a steady decrease in his support since the day he got in. Elizabeth Warren's been upticking a little bit. Some of the others are kind of holding steady. So they see now an opportunity to try to come at him and lay the foundation for the line of attack. 3 weeks from now is the first Democratic debate. And that's when they hope, I think, to begin to really differentiate themselves from one another and from him. I think you're starting to see them lay some of that groundwork.
Mark, I'm sure that they are frustrated that Joe Biden took a long time to get into the race. They've been working at it for many months, and he's about 19 points ahead of them, and that's been relatively steady since he got in the race in early April.
Yeah, that's very true. He's about 19, 18 points in the Real Clear Politics average in national polls. But despite the best efforts of the Democrats to change our system, we don't have a national election, a popular election. And if you look at some of the states, Iowa, he's only up by 4. Nevada, he's up by 3. California, he's up by 8. Texas, he's up by 1. And Massachusetts, he's down by 3. Really, the only major state, primary state, where he's doing well is New Hampshire, where he's up by 13. So he hasn't locked I agree with Mo. He hasn't locked this thing up yet, and it's actually they're closer to him than it may seem from the national polls. But why is Biden, I think, vulnerable? I think the main reason Biden is vulnerable is because he's ahead in the polls because there's a segment of the Democratic electorate that has convinced itself that Biden's the guy who can beat Donald Trump. And so they're willing to moderate a little bit if they can beat Donald Trump. And he's the guy who can win back the forgotten Americans who voted twice for Obama and Biden but switched to Donald Trump in 2016. I think he's actually the worst person to win those people back for 2 specific reasons. First, because they're doing better under Donald Trump than they were under Obama-Biden. They lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs under Obama-Biden. They've gained 500,000 under Trump. And second of all, one of the reasons why they voted against him, for Trump, is because they were sick of the political establishments in both parties, in the Democratic and Republican parties, who weren't listening to them. And Biden is a charter member of the establishment. He's been in Washington for 46 years. So I think there's this myth that Biden can win back the forgotten Americans who voted for Trump, and I think he's probably the least capable of all the Democratic candidates to do it.
And you heard Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, at least, and I'm sure others, but those two stick in my mind, Mo, basically saying that we can't go backwards, which I'm assuming that they're saying they don't want to go back to the Obama-Biden era. And Bernie even writing an op-ed today talking about how his upbringing gives him a better chance to win back those voters. How do you think that's going to go over?
Look, it's a delicate line they have to walk because Democrats generally, I think, still feel nostalgic and good about the Obama years, the Obama-Biden years, and so how do they say we need to move forward without necessarily attacking the immediate Democratic past is going to be a little bit of a tricky tightrope for them to walk, but they're going to try to walk it. And look, to Mark's point, I don't know if Joe Biden is the guy who can best win back those voters that he was talking about. He may well be, but others are going to make the case as well. But I do think Republicans should be thinking about the fact that it's not as slam dunk with those voters this time around as it was this last time. And if you want some indication of that, look at 2018, where in those states, Michigan and Pennsylvania, or Pennsylvania, we Democrats started to win it back in those midterm elections. People there are not as 100% solid on the president as they once were.
And Mark, I don't have time to show it, but you even had one Democratic candidate, John Hickenlooper, the former governor of Colorado, booed because he said socialism is not the answer. Last word to you.
Which would have been a completely non-controversial statement in either Republican or Democratic circles until very recently. But look, I mean, that's a brilliant move by Hickenlooper, because we're talking about John Hickenlooper. Would we ever be talking about John Hickenlooper if he hadn't said that? And he's betting, he's being an unconventional political entrepreneur. He's betting that there's an extant demand for socialism in the Democratic Party, but he's betting there's a latent demand for moderation, and he can find that lane.
Well, and also,
I don't know if it exists.
Governors are different, right? They had to.
Sure.
They were executives of a state. It's a little bit different for them. Mo Alethi and Marc Thiessen, thanks for kicking off the week with us.